Everything is falling apart right before the best chapter of your life begins. I need you to sit with that sentence for a second. Because if you're one of the 144,000, what you're walking through right now is not the disaster it looks like. It's the doorway. The doorway has just been disguised so convincingly as destruction that the average person would never walk through it. They'd run the other way. They'd quit. They'd numb out. They'd settle. And that is precisely why most people never see the best chapter of their lives, because they refuse to walk through what looked like the worst chapter to get there. But the 144,000 are not average. You were sealed for something specific. And heaven does not promote a sealed one without first dismantling everything that would be in the way of what you're about to carry. Tonight I'm going to walk you through 7 things that always happen right before the best chapter of a chosen one's life. And every single one of them is going to look catastrophic when you're in the middle of it. I want you to mark which of these you've been experiencing, because if you can count 3 or more, you are not in collapse. You are in transition. The first one is that the people you trusted the most begin to walk away. Not all at once. That would be too obvious. It happens in waves. One relationship cools, then another. A friend who used to call you every week suddenly goes silent. A family member starts treating you differently, and you can't figure out why. People who said they would always be there start to drift, and when you try to address it, they act like nothing is wrong even though you can feel the temperature has dropped. This is one of the most painful experiences a chosen one can walk through. Because you didn't do anything. You weren't difficult. You weren't demanding. You loved these people. And now, they're slipping out of your life one by one. You start to wonder if it's you. You start replaying conversations. You start apologizing for things you didn't even do. Stop apologizing. Look at what happened to Joseph. Before he ever stood in front of Pharaoh and saved a nation, his own brothers, the people he grew up with, the people who shared the same father, sat down together and made a deliberate decision to get rid of him. They didn't just stop calling. They threw him in a pit. They sold him to a passing caravan. They went home and told their father he was dead. And the reason wasn't anything Joseph had done wrong. The reason was the calling on his life that they couldn't stand to be near. Some of the people walking out of your life right now are not walking out because of anything you did. They're walking out because the anointing on your life is starting to surface, and they cannot operate in proximity to it without exposing what they're trying to keep hidden. Heaven is not letting them stay, because if they stayed, they would either drag you back into who you used to be, or they would betray you when you stepped fully into who you're becoming. Either way, your assignment requires their absence. I know how much this one hurts. Because some of the people leaving are not strangers. They are people you prayed for, people you stood with, people you covered when nobody else was covering them. And now they're acting like they barely know you, and you cannot make sense of it, because you would never have done that to them. But you have to understand, what they are responding to is not your behavior. It is the weight on your spirit. The same weight Joseph carried before his brothers ever knew what to do with him. They didn't reject him because he had wronged them. They rejected him because his very presence reminded them of what they were not. And rather than be transformed by proximity to him, they chose to remove him from their lives. Bless them and let them go. Don't chase them. Don't beg them to stay. Don't spend the next 2 years trying to figure out what you did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. The Father is making space around you for the relationships that belong to the next chapter, and most of them have not even appeared in your life yet. You cannot meet the new ones while you're still grieving the loss of the old ones. Bless them and walk forward. The second one is that an old wound resurfaces that you thought you had already healed from. You'll be doing fine. You'll be going about your week. And then out of nowhere, something will trigger a memory you haven't thought about in years. A smell, a song, a face in a crowd, a phrase someone says. And suddenly you're back in the place where it happened. You feel the same heaviness, the same shame, the same anger, the same grief, And you can't understand why this is coming up now, after you thought you had moved past it. Here's what's actually happening. The Father does not promote a sealed one with infected wounds still buried in the soul. He brings the wound back up to the surface, not to torture you, not to take you backwards, but to finish the work that was never fully finished the first time around. The first round of healing usually addresses the obvious damage, but there are deeper layers that only get touched when you're being prepared for greater responsibility. And those layers always come up right before promotion. Think about David. Before he was crowned king, he had to face Saul. Saul wasn't just an external enemy. Saul represented every father figure wound, every betrayal by authority, every rejection from someone who was supposed to protect him. And the Father didn't let David skip that battle. He made him walk through it. He made him refuse to take revenge, even when the opportunity was handed to him on a silver platter twice. Because the man who would sit on the throne could not get there carrying bitterness toward the man who had tried to kill him. The throne required a clean heart. If an old wound is resurfacing, the Father isn't being cruel. He's removing the last thing that would have polluted the next chapter. The third one is that the income, the resources, the things you were relying on, they start drying up. The job that was stable suddenly isn't. The clients that were loyal suddenly aren't. The savings that were accumulating start getting eaten away by emergencies you didn't see coming. You look at your accounts and you can't figure out where it all went. And you start to panic because everything you used to count on is becoming unreliable at the exact moment you need it most. This is one of the hardest signs to walk through, because the world tells you that financial pressure is always a punishment. But heaven uses financial pressure to break a chosen one's dependence on the same provision they've been leaning on, so they can be moved to a completely different source of supply. Elijah went through this exactly. There was a famine in the land, and the Father told him to go hide by a brook. He drank from that brook. Ravens, of all things, brought him food twice a day. And he probably thought, this is my system now. This is how it's going to work. But then the brook dried up. The very supply he had gotten comfortable with simply ran out. And the Lord told him to go to a widow in Zarephath, who had nothing and yet would feed him for the entire rest of the famine out of a jar of oil and a handful of flour that never ran out. The Father didn't dry up the brook because he was angry with Elijah. He dried it up because Elijah's next assignment was in a different place, with a different person, through a different miracle, and he never would have moved as long as the brook was still flowing. If something in your finances is drying up right now, look up. Heaven is moving you. The supply you were leaning on was never your real source. He was, and he is about to prove it. What you just experienced was not content. It was a mirror, and mirrors demand a decision. If you are ready to go to the root, to finally understand why you think, feel, and perceive differently from everyone around you. The secret protocol carries the 7 keys that reveal what God placed inside you before you ever drew your first breath. Full audiobook included for every moment of your day. Plus, the awakening map as a bonus. The 5 stages of spiritual awakening mapped with clarity, showing where you are right now and what the Spirit is releasing in this season. Link pinned in the first comment. Not for much longer, and you did not make it to the end without a reason. My name is George, and I have to tell you something honest. Every single one of these 7 signs I have walked through personally, some of them more than once. There was a stretch of my life where I genuinely believed God had forgotten me. People were leaving. Money was tight. My health was unstable. My prayers felt like they were hitting a wall. And I kept asking the same question over and over. Father, what did I do wrong? Why is everything falling apart at the same time? It wasn't until much later, after I had walked all the way through it, that I realized he was answering my question with his silence. He wasn't saying you did something wrong. He was saying, I am dismantling everything that would have stopped you from receiving what's next. And on the other side of that season, that brutal, lonely, confusing season, was the best chapter of my life by a margin I cannot even describe. So let me give you the rest of the signs, because I want you armed for what you're walking through. The fourth one is that the spiritual atmosphere around you intensifies. The dreams get vivid, or they get dark, or they stop entirely. You start sensing things in places you used to walk into, casually heaviness in certain rooms, a strange knowing when someone walks into your space, an inability to be around people who used to feel normal. You feel like you're being watched at times. You feel like prayers are being blocked. You wake up at 3 in the morning with no explanation. You feel pulled to pray for people you barely know. This is what happens when the sealed one is approaching breakthrough. The realm around you gets active because there is a war being fought over the territory you're about to step into. Daniel prayed for 21 days and didn't get an answer. And when the answer finally came, the angel told him the answer had been released on the first day, but the Prince of Persia, a demonic principality, had withstood him in the heavenly realm for 3 weeks. The delay wasn't God being slow. The delay was a war. If your spiritual senses are activating right now, you are not crazy. You are not making it up. You are not too sensitive. You are picking up on a battle that has been escalating because you are getting close to something significant in the spirit. Don't shrink back. Pray louder. Worship harder. Cover yourself in the Word. Heaven's response is already on the way. Sometimes the resistance is the confirmation. And I want you to notice something specific about Daniel's story. He didn't have any natural way to know that a war was happening on his behalf. From his perspective, the heavens were silent. He kept praying, kept fasting, kept showing up at the same window 3 times a day, facing Jerusalem. There was no sign, no confirmation, no feeling that anything was working. And if Daniel had quit on day 18, or day 19, or day 20, he would have missed the message that the angel was fighting to deliver to him. The breakthrough came specifically because he didn't quit during the resistance. That is the pattern for sealed ones. The resistance is not the sign that the answer isn't coming. The resistance is the sign that the answer is so significant, the enemy is mobilizing his own kingdom to try to stop it. So if you are feeling pressure right now, you cannot explain heaviness on your chest, anxiety with no source, a sense that something is trying to wear you down that is not weakness in you. That is opposition to something heaven has already released. And the only thing required of you in this stretch is to keep showing up at the window. Keep facing the direction of the promise. Keep praying even when nothing seems to be moving. The angel is on the way. The fifth one is that the very thing you used to be passionate about no longer moves you. You used to love your job. Now you can't stand walking into the building. You used to be drawn to certain people, certain hobbies, certain topics, certain ways of spending your time. Now they all feel hollow. You feel guilty about it because you don't want to be ungrateful. You don't want to seem like you're throwing away what God gave you. But the truth is, you can't generate excitement for it anymore, no matter how hard you try. This is not depression. This is reassignment. The Father is detaching your appetite from one season so He can attach it to the next. He's not going to leave you sitting comfortably in a place you've outgrown. He's going to make the old place uncomfortable enough that you finally have the courage to step out of it. Look at Abraham. He didn't leave Ur because Ur was on fire. Ur was his home. He had family there. He had a life there. But God told him to leave, and the only way Abraham was going to actually go was if something inside him had already loosened from where he was. The leaving started in his spirit, long before it started in his feet. If the things that used to satisfy you don't satisfy you anymore, that's not a problem. That's the loosening. The next instruction is coming. The sixth one is that you experience a season of profound disorientation about who you are. This one is subtle. It doesn't always feel like a crisis. Sometimes it just feels like you're a stranger to yourself. You look in the mirror, and you don't recognize what you see. You don't know what you want anymore. The labels that used to define you, your role, your title, your reputation, your group, your political leanings, your personality type, none of it fits the way it used to. You can't even describe yourself when somebody asks. This identity disruption is one of the most consistent signs that a sealed one is about to enter a new chapter. Because heaven is not going to walk you into your next assignment carrying the wrong name for yourself. He has to strip off the old identity before he can clothe you in the new one. Saul didn't become Paul on the road to Damascus and just keep using the same business card. The encounter changed the man. The man got a new name. The new name went with the new assignment. If you don't recognize yourself right now, if you feel like a question mark walking around in your own skin, you are not lost. You are being renamed. Wait for the new name. The Father always gives it. And when He does, you will look back and realize the old identity was holding you back from things you couldn't even see while you were wearing it. Think about how disorienting it must have been for Saul on the road to Damascus. The man was at the top of his world. He had the credentials. He had the credibility. He had the network. He had the religious clout. He could walk into any room of importance and be received with respect. And in one moment, heaven knocked him to the ground, blinded him, and stripped him of every single thing that had defined him for his entire adult life. He sat in the dark for 3 days, didn't eat, didn't drink. The man who used to know exactly who he was had no idea anymore. Everything he had built his identity on was gone, and the new identity hadn't arrived yet. That gap, that 3-day, 4-day, year-long, however long it takes gap, is where many of you are right now. You are in the space between the old name and the new one. Heaven has stripped you of how you used to define yourself, and the new definition has not been spoken over you yet. It feels like being in a tunnel with no light at either end. But that tunnel is exactly where the Father remakes a person. And when you come out, you will have a clarity about who you are that nobody around you can shake. Because the new name will not have been given to you by people. It will have been given to you by God Himself. And no one who didn't speak it has the authority to question it. The 7th one, and this is the one that confirms all the others, is that everything goes quiet right before the breakthrough. There comes a point in the transition where even the chaos stops. The phone stops ringing. The drama dies down. The people who were causing problems disappear from your radar. And what's left is just you and the silence. And in the silence, you start to wonder if anything is ever going to change. You wonder if you imagined the whole calling. You wonder if you made up the dreams and the signs and the words you thought you heard. Look at the gap between the cross and the resurrection. Saturday, the day no one talks about. Friday had the chaos, and Sunday had the victory. But Saturday was just silence. The disciples sitting in a room not knowing what to do. The women preparing spices for a body. Heaven was silent. And on that Saturday, the very thing that would change the entire history of humanity was already in motion. The stone was about to move. The body was about to rise. But Saturday looked like nothing. If you are in a Saturday season right now, do not interpret the silence as defeat. The breakthrough is closer than your senses are telling you. The very stillness you are walking through is the last stretch of road before the chapter changes. Stay in it. Don't quit on Saturday. Sunday morning is closer than you think. Now hear me on this. If you are walking through 3 or more of these signs at the same time, you are not falling apart. You are being repositioned. The Father does not let the 144,000 wander into their next chapter unprepared. He dismantles, He empties, He strips, He silences, He prunes, and then He releases. And the chapter that comes out the other side does not look like anything you experienced before. You were not sealed to live an ordinary story. You were sealed to walk through a refining only a few are even invited to. The very fact that all of this is hitting you at once is not the evidence that something is wrong. It is the evidence that something is right. The Father is moving. The shaking is targeted. And what is being shaken away is everything that would have stopped you from carrying what's about to land. Before you close out of this video, I need you to do one specific thing. In the comments, write the number of signs from this list that have been hitting you in this season. Just the number. Then one specific detail about which sign has felt the heaviest and why. Not a general comment. The exact sign and the exact heaviness. Because the moment you put it in writing, you stop being a victim of the dismantling, and you become a witness of it. You stop asking why this is happening, and you start standing in agreement with what it is preparing you for. The chapter you are about to walk into was written before you were born. Heaven has been preparing it longer than you have been alive. Every loss, every silence, every door that closed, every person who walked away, all of it has been folded into the architecture of what you are about to step into. Nothing has been wasted. Nothing has been overlooked. And nothing the enemy meant for harm has been able to cancel what was written about you in eternity. Don't quit one Saturday before Sunday.